to consider thinking through ethnobiological relativism and by offering an exploration of philosophies of environmental change. My theoretical point of departure is that environmental knowledge unfolds in social and cultural contexts, and these paradigms of relationship with the natural world inform our actions and beliefs about it. If we want to study or learn TEK, we must seek to understand the foundations of multiple environmental knowledges, the philosophies of the TEK we are studying, and also we must interrogate our own environmental knowledges. Here, I'm going to talk a little bit about Native science, Western science, and suggest that we heed Indigenous values as foundational guidelines for our thinking and planning about environmental change. I also wish to draw ethnobiologists' attention today to a useful theoretical framework for understanding Indigenous knowledge in TEK, and that is the field of Indigenous studies and philosophy. In the past few decades, Native scholars have begun to outline in writing Indigenous epistemologies. This is like, ethnobiologists have not really incorporated these as much into our work until very recently. And there's a growing body of theory and outlines for practice on Native science, such as the works of John Mohawk, Gregory Kahete, Daniel Wildcat, and other people. These works are useful to all of us because we no longer need to solely use Western theory and philosophy to analyze what we are learning from Indigenous people and about Indigenous cultures. Imagine for a minute that Western scientific theories are not widely regarded as the closest things to fact in existence. Suspend positivism in order to see it within the very human social dynamics that promulgate it. French philosopher Bruno Latour has recently invited the world into this exercise, along with other people who've been saying this for a long time. He claims that Western fervor for science has arisen in a place once reserved for Christianity, and in that scientific fact has for many become the word of God. Science and Christianity are not opposed, he suggests, but rather the human dedication to scientific positivism and Western faith in innovation of technology are religious. Evolution can be regarded as a form of creation narrative, and certainly scientism can be dogmatic. I like Latour's argument because it helps us suspend our over-reliance upon Western science as the only means of arriving at truth about the world and enables us to see Western science as an ethnobiology. All right, so hold that in one hand for a minute, and now let's turn to Native science on the other hand. Native science is a philosophy and methods within which TEK arises. It is Indigenous ways of knowing all phenomena. Scholars have identified some of the principles common to many Indigenous sciences. One is that humans are not separate from the natural world. The natural world is a social world. Another is that there are many forms of truth and ways of arriving at it. A third is that creation is an ongoing cycle of destruction and regeneration. Within all creation, there is a balance, and human beings have responsibilities within and to that balance. Native science unfolds within the creation stories of Indigenous peoples. So if Western science can be understood as a social construct, If Western science can be understood as a social construct, the ideologies and narratives of which are even informed by Christianity, then perhaps we can understand how Indigenous creation narratives are part of Native science. In my work, I seek to understand Haudenosaunee philosophies of the environment, or Haudenosaunee environmental knowledge, or HEK, H-E-K. Haudenosaunee are also known as the Iroquois, or Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, Cayuga, Seneca, and Tuscarora nations, whose homeland is located in what is now Quebec, Ontario, and New York State. Coming from a master's in ethnobotany, I wanted to understand the bigger picture, the historical and spiritual, philosophical and political foundations of Haudenosaunee relationships with the natural world. I interviewed over 40 people and participated in many community teachings, classes, and projects over 4 years. So one of the strongest messages from my research is one of the philosophical foundations of Haudenosaunee environmental knowledge. The health or balance of everything in creation depends upon good relationships, and these take work. Here we're talking about all relationships, interpersonal, interspecies, international, intergenerational. The emphasis is on many circles of community and their connections. Other basic values in Haudenosaunee philosophy with regard to all of existence are a continual return to compassion, gratitude, and the strength or will to implement good thinking and good relations. These three ways of being, along with the equitable sharing of the natural world, are the foundations of peace. Directions for knowing the natural world and one's own purpose and way within it are found within Haudenosaunee oral memory, what they call their original instructions. Haudenosaunee environmental knowledge is a spiritual ecology. It is knowledge that is adaptive because it has been naturalized in place since creation. I'm going to show you this slide, but I decided there's too much text on it, so I just want to show you the picture of my mentor, McGill there. He's a Tuscarora community scholar and artist and historian. And then I'm going to go here because I'm going to read his words to you. I don't want you to get distracted reading while I speak. So anyway, my mentor, McGill, has summarized Haudenosaunee relationships with the environment in the following way. This world is a reflection of the sky world. It was made on purpose as a place of constant regeneration, and our paths will eventually take us back to sky world. Our well-being depends on our relationship with the living spirits of the universe. The earth is our mother, and we're made from her flesh and connected to her all our life. Humans were assigned specific duties to help maintain the harmony of the natural world cycles. These original instructions are the basis of our society. Animals are our relatives, and we need to respect them for what they provide and give thanks for their service. The waters of the earth are vital for the overall well-being of the ecosystem and our personal health. Plant foods are a form of medicine that if we respect and use them properly, they will provide physical and spiritual nourishment. And the medicine plants are provided to build our immunity and address specific ailments. Thunder beings look after our well-being by keeping the destructive forces in check and cleansing the earth. Birds beautify our world and teach us how to relate to the changing seasons. And the Creator put out a plan in motion for us at the time of creation and told us to be thankful for what's provided. So we've introduced Haudenosaunee environmental philosophy as a distinct ethnobiology. Now I want to discuss Western and Haudenosaunee discourses about environmental change. I think it's safe to say that much of humanity has reached a state of frustration or denial with regard to our knowledge of anthropologically driven environmental change. We've been collectively unable to make meaningful actions to stem or even reverse the severity of human impacts on Mother Earth. Scholars and scientists say that we've moved out of the Holocene into a new epoch they're calling the Anthropocene, which is being defined as an era of unprecedented human impact on the rest of the natural world. And there is increased investment and exploitation of non-renewable extractive industries, and these actions are particularly self-defeating and senseless in light of what science has told us. According to anthropologists Rojas and Johnson, there are two major threads of international dialogue about how humankind can adapt to environmental change in the Anthropocene. The first and still dominant theory regards human-environment interactions through an economistic lens, emphasizing the need for technology and economic schemes that will enable humanity to continue capitalist business as usual. The second stream of thought deprivileges capitalist and economic concerns in favor of models that emphasize human rights and localized efforts to protect the quality of life of all species. Somehow, though, it seems that both dominant discourses are still overly influenced by Malthusian discourse of skyrocketing population levels, scarcity of resources, competition and innovation as drivers of human adaptation to environmental change, still a Spencerian survival of the fittest. In the midst of all this discourse about global crisis, scarcity, population boom, destruction, terrorism, etc., an amazing number of new social movements have arisen around the world. These movements have happened everywhere and are intergenerational, but are primarily driven by young people. From Occupy to student movements to entire revolutions, people are calling for a reorganization of leadership and economy, and rightfully connecting these with reimagining our relationships with the natural world. It's pretty exciting. People worldwide are calling for a restoration of human relationships with each other and with Mother Earth, and identifying that process as happening through economies of cooperation. Meanwhile, Indigenous leaders around the world have been championing efforts to protect all species through restoration and cooperation, arguably since the beginning of colonization. In 1974, Haudenosaunee, Hopi, and other Indigenous leaders went to the United Nations in Geneva, where Haudenosaunee leader Oren Lyons said that only if the rights of all species are honored can we guarantee a foundation of life and rights for future generations. And this has continued through the last 22 years through the Rio Summit, through the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Peoples Issues, and etc. So in contrast with Western directives on environmental change, Indigenous leaders around the world have made a call for humanity to emphasize community, reciprocity, cultivate sacred relationships with all of creation as a means of adaptation. So in 2011 and 2012, in interviews and conversations with people in Haudenosaunee homelands, one of the questions I asked about was people's primary concerns about the environment. Their answers ranged from garbage and recycling to potable water to pesticide runoff, but many people spoke about Onkwehonwe prophecies of earth changes. Onkwehonwe is a word in the Mohawk language that means real people or original people. It's used to describe those who live an indigenous way of life. So while many use that to refer to Haudenosaunee, it also technically includes all indigenous people. People described earth changes as sacred characterization of the epics of where we have come from and where we are going in our relationship with Mother Earth. Prophecies of earth changes are Haudenosaunee specific, transmitted to them by the Creator through various ways of knowing, but some are the same or similar to other Native oral traditions. Earth changes described to me included: trees will die from the top down, winds from the west will increase in strength and severity, increased flooding, birds will stop singing, they'll fall out of the sky, fish will die in the water, rivers will turn red and light on fire, growth of corn will be stunted and it will tassel, people will stop being able to communicate, women will not be able to get pregnant, babies will die, all kinds of mutations of species, wild strawberries will disappear, and more. It's pretty scary stuff. One elder who I interviewed told me that when she got to be about 12 or so and her grandparents told her about these prophecies, she got so scared that she got mad at her mother and asked, "If you knew this, why did you have us?" So most people who I interviewed agreed that we're now in the time of earth changes. People explained how prophecies pointed to environmental degradation and climate change brought by industry and contamination, even though they didn't explicitly say it in the prophecies and in the oral tradition. That's how they read the prophecies. Interestingly, they explained that from the destruction will arise a positive change in human consciousness about our relationships with each other and with Mother Earth. So Christine Sky, and I don't have her picture up here, I have some other people's pictures, who has now passed away, but she was a Mohawk woman from Cherokee, said, and I think that's what's going to happen, they say. You know how they're all talking about 2012, right? A lot of them say there's going to be a shift, a change. And it's the environment, or is it our attitude toward things? There is going to be a positive change, that's been predicted. And that's who's going to bring it, is them, the young ones who are coming up now. Prophecies of earth changes direct Onkwehonwe to continue their responsibilities that were given to them through their original instructions, to plant foods given to them by the Creator and to communicate with Mother Earth through ceremony, acknowledging elements of creation and every place is sacred. Deye Warlakwa Bomberry, a Mohawk woman from the Bear Clan, said, "In terms of all the disasters that are happening, I can see that Mother Earth is trying to tell us she's not happy, and that we've taken so much and given so little, nothing in return, and it's to be expected. She's letting us know. There's still time for us to correct our actions and really live in harmony the way that we're supposed to before." A long time ago, when Peacemaker brought us together and taught us how to live as one with the earth, and how to give thanks, and how to be appreciative. Just don't take and not give back. We appointed ourselves the responsibilities of taking care of the earth, and that's the responsibility of all of us, actually. So we're caretakers of the earth. Mother Earth would say, I think, she would be appreciative for us continuing to practice our ceremonies and continuing to be thankful throughout the year for different blessings we're given. And Norma General, Cayuga's Night Clan, said we're supposed to show our appreciation and give thanks and do ceremony for them. And by them, she's talking about the environment. So Onkwehonwe prophecies emphasize people come together to take care of one another as community and family. They also predicted that there would be a time that non-native people would go to indigenous people to learn their ways in order to survive. And that is perhaps where ethnobiologists come in. Iroquois also said, they are about the coming of the nations together and taking care of yourself and the land and each other. But Mother Earth would still say that we have got a lot of work to do, and we can be more open to sharing our knowledge with Haudenosaunee and making sure it's not a secret. Whether they accept it fully or just teachings on their own, but just giving people the opportunity to learn. And Nene McDonald, Mohawk American woman, said, prophecy, oral teaching in the Haudenosaunee tradition is that there's going to be a day when the earth starts to shake, rattle, and roll. And it's because we're going to get close to the end of time. Before all that happens, you're going to see the 4 races of man. They're all going to collectively come together as one. And that's where you're going to see reunion, which is one mind, one heart. And then the people do come together. What we will have is the white roots of peace. It goes out in the 4 directions of the earth. These 4 races, they're all going to come together. They're all going to meet at the base of the tree. And they're going to give strength to that tree again where it's standing up straight. Then, and only then, the world as we know it will be cleansed. And the people that are holding the tree are the ones who are going to survive and go for the next 1,000 years or so to bring new life to this world. So you have a chance, you can come to that tree. We joke together that James Cameron probably got some messages from the Haudenosaunee before he made Avatar. Anyway, and then Norma General, Cayuga's Night Clan, said, you coming to us is part of our prophecies. Onkwehonwe prophecies of earth changes tell us that social change is environmental change, and the vehicle for this change is to choose spiritual values over materialism. Then, in winter 2012, something amazing happened. Indigenous and non-Indigenous people did come together to speak on behalf of community, justice for Native people and the rights of Mother Earth. It was just as it had been foretold. I've never seen anything like it. Hundreds of thousands of people all across North America gathered for teach-ins, marches, letter campaigns, sacred dances, round dances, border blockades, highway blockades, train blockades, everything. It was a movement primarily driven by Indigenous youth called Idle No More. The message was that they would no longer sit idly by and let colonial governments, mostly the Canadian government, defile the rights of Indigenous people and Mother Earth. And then too, just as the prophecy said, on December 21st, hundreds of thousands of natives marched to Parliament Hill in Ottawa to speak out on behalf of their ancestors, descendants, and to defend Mother Earth. This is all precipitated by a Canadian termination legislation, which I can, if you're interested in hearing more about it, I can tell you afterwards. But I was astonished to see how the timing of it is fulfilled. So timing of it fulfilled so many Indigenous prophecies, the same ones that also tell us there will be a rise in consciousness across nations. So my experience of learning about prophecies of earth changes made me begin to think, is it possible that all human narratives of earth changes could be true? Can we value the Indigenous ones as well as those who come from climate scientists as equally valid forms of information? If over-reliance upon policy and technology fail, as it is what frustratingly seems to be happening, could the key to adaptation be at the community level, looking to traditional knowledge, valuing and relying upon the collective, and making sure we continue to communicate with Mother Earth? In summary, I'm trying to encourage a basis for considering that all scientific or environmental knowledge stems from and unfolds in social context. Don't throw anything at me yet, I'm almost done. Which suggests that all methods or frameworks of knowing the natural world can be considered in ethnobiology, even science. In light of all of this, my concluding questions are, do humans create self-fulfilling environmental prophecies? Does our vision or relationship with the natural world affect our actions? If our vision does affect our actions, And if, as Onkwehonwe suggests, our human social relationships reflect our relationships with other species, how do we move forward together to live in balance with each other in the natural world? And I'd like to humbly suggest that we heed Onkwehonwe values as environmental knowledge. These values encourage us to balance our interspecies sociality, to come together and participate in community, to share in order to live in peace, to engage in a practice of gratitude, and to attend to our roles and responsibilities as stewards of Mother Earth. Thank you.
You're just on time. We're not have time for questions. So if you'd like questions, we can do it after.